What's up, y'all? I'm back. I had to cut it off because my mom came home, and I didn't want her talking through this stuff. Verse 13, I think, is with the last place I left off. So this is part 2 of chapter 3, 1 Kings chapter 3, part 2. Verse 13, I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all thy days. So basically saying he's going to make him one of a kind. And if thou wilt walk in my ways to keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father David did walk, then I will lengthen thy days, allowing him to live a longer life, basically. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And he came to Jerusalem, and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and offered up burnt offerings, and offered peace offerings, and made a feast to all his servants. It's kind of like a celebration, I'm thinking. Verse 16, then came there 2 women that were harlots unto the king, and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my lord, I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered of a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the 3rd day, after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also, and we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we 2 in the house. And this woman's child died in the night, because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight, and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I rose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son, which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. So the one lady who actually had the child is telling the truth and saying, hey, this lady took my child, switched it with her dead child to try to make me think that I have a dead child, but I really knew my child was the real one, which is pretty stupid for the other woman to do that, because she didn't take into consideration that the other woman might know for sure that her child is alive. So it's a pretty dumb move. Hold on a second. Gotta give me some water. You'll see when you serve God, you can see who's lying, who's not. God gives you the wisdom. He'll teach you, but you gotta have faith that He'll teach you. You gotta basically know that God's gonna let you believe only the truth and not believe a lie. You'll see with King Solomon that he was connected to God, and that God was able to tell him, hey, this is the right person, this is the wrong person, this is the honest person, this is the unhonest person. Okay. And the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king. Then said the king, verse 23, the one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living. And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought a sword before the king. Excuse me. And the king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to the one. Excuse me. And half to the other. Then spake the woman whose the living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, O my lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. But the other said, let it be neither mine nor thine, but divide it. Then the king answered and said, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof. See, he knew a mother's instincts would be to protect her actual child. And the other didn't have a child, so she had no instincts. No motherly instincts. Because she was willing to just give it up. Like, hey, go ahead, kill it. I don't care. And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged. And they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. Which is a pretty smart move for King Solomon to do, you know? Like back then, like nowadays, we've heard that story so much we think, oh, that's nothing. But back then it was like probably something that's never been thought of. And God was able to give it to King Solomon, give him that wisdom to know. And this dude is known throughout the whole world as the wisest man that ever lived. I said man with a D, man. It's crazy though. It says in verse 20, and she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me. I noticed the word midnight though. Maybe that's when she was asleep. Maybe she was actually asleep. Or what if she wasn't and the other lady thought she was? But she rose at midnight and took my son from beside me, while thine handmaid, she's telling King Solomon, while your handmaid, her, the good lady, slept, and laid it in her. Okay, yeah, so while thine handmaid slept, it's midnight, they're asleep, well, she's asleep, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. Which, if you think about it, a dead child, you know, laid it in her bosom, that could cause her a disease. So that lady was being really evil, because if there was a disease or something like that, unless it was so too soon, you know, the baby had just passed away, maybe no diseases had time to kick in, so. But I'm wondering if this good girl had her, you know, if they both, it says they both had their babies, and it came to pass the third day after that I was delivered, in verse 18, that this woman was delivered also. So 3 days later, we were together. There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. So it was just them in the house. That's another dumb move. You know, it's the only two in the house. She's gonna know it's just her, nobody else. Excuse me. I'm thinking about doing I don't know. Because these are like kind of little Bible studies, not really big Bible studies. I'm talking if it was a real Bible study, I'd take an hour or two just for the whole thing. But I'm going to have to read through it and, excuse me, drink water. Read through it and decide how I'm going to do the study. I'm also getting tired though. But it says all Israel heard the judgment In verse 28, heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment. Now, this is not something you like see in a judge in a court, you know. This is something like if you seen King Solomon, if King Solomon had his own Judge Solomon case or show, like Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, all them, this dude would stand out against all of them. Like, he had so much wisdom, people could look at him and tell. I'm pretty sure even if they were atheists, they could tell this guy has God living in him. Because he knows things deeply and can judge people's faces, facial expressions, their tones of voice. Because me personally, I read people too. I don't know if I read them as good as he does, but I read people intelligently, and they basically say a lot through their facial expressions and their tones. And that's something God taught me. So, same principle though. King Solomon was able to look at their faces and say, you know, this person seems like a liar. Let's try this, and then their reactions both gave him the answers to who to give the child to, who the right mother was, you know. What I was going to say at first is, it says that the good lady was saying, this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it. She rose at midnight and took my son. And I'm wondering, while thine handmaid slept, if she's asleep, how does she know? I was thinking that at first, but it's kind of obvious when you wake up and your living child's not there and there's a dead child, and you know what your child looks like. You're going to know, obviously, it was switched. But who's to say someone didn't come in and switch it, you know? It had to be, obviously, in that moment, they knew, like she knew it was her for a fact. Then said the king, I'm going over these verses. Then said the king, the one saith, verse 23, this is my son that liveth, and thy son is dead. And the other saith, nay, but thy son is dead, my son is living. King said, divide the living child. King said, bring me a sword, and they brought a sword before the king. The king said, divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other. Which, I don't know. He is a king, and he had that kind of authority to do that. So I'm thinking that's why the good lady was saying, the one that was in the right, the actual mother was, I'm wondering why she didn't think to herself, if she didn't, hey, is he serious? He's got to be just joking. I mean, the bad chick too, the bad chick that was lying, the false mother. I wonder why they didn't think, well, a sword, would this king really do this? I mean, I wonder if they thought, I think this guy's joking, he wouldn't really do that. You know, they didn't call his bluff or whatever. Well, you're bluffing. They actually believed him, and the actual mother, the good girl, was like, don't give it to her, and the other one's like, no, just cut it in half. It's like, come on now, a king cutting a baby in half doesn't seem like a good king. But they didn't. I wonder that though. It's like, did they really think he would do that? I don't know. Go back to chapter 3, verse 1. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh. He got real close to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, like best friends, I guess, enough that Pharaoh liked him enough to say, hey, here's my daughter. Marry her. And he ended up marrying her. I want to know why he brought the daughter, into the city of David until he had end up building his own house. Maybe because it was like the only house he could live in. Like he was staying. Wonder if he was staying with somebody, or it wasn't the actual his own house. Was it someone else's house? Because it says until he had made an end of building his own house. So it tells me that he had someone else to live with, or maybe his dad's house, and he was building his house in the house of the Lord, and was staying with his friends or his dad's house until he can make his own house, you know. I'd like to know where he was staying before that. Only the people, in the house of the Lord and the wall of Jerusalem. Oh, until he had made an end of building his own house in the house of the Lord and the wall of Jerusalem round about. Only the people sacrificed in high places, because there was no house built unto the name of the Lord until those days. My stomach's growling, kind of. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and burnt incense in high places. See, I want to know why it says high places. Like, what does that mean? I'm thinking about just reading this and maybe do a little talking about it, but I want to do an in-depth study of each of these. So I'll probably work on chapter 1, or I might just go through Samuel, because 1st, 2nd Samuel basically builds you up to this one, 1st, 2nd Kings, and then goes to Chronicles after 1st, 2nd Kings. But yeah, I'm just gonna probably read through and just keep reading through, but talk about it a little bit, and just redo these videos and do an in-depth study. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, like 10 parts to one chapter. Each part being an hour or two. But I basically read through 3, so ended at 28, verse 28, which is the last verse. And I'm going to go to chapter 4 in next video. So like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you guys want an in-depth study, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to share this with your friends and family. Help them grow in the Lord with us. And God bless y'all. Love y'all. Jesus loves you. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.